Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth NFL podcast. I'm your host, Anish Gupta,
And I'm Srikar Rajendran.
and it has been a while. It has been a while, but
Jeez.
we are back, and we're back better than ever. Some of us took some trips, like one of us went to Ohio, and yeah, honestly, it's been kind of some dead weeks, but football seasons, we're slowly approaching. This is the last month without football. There's only a couple more Sundays till football. And I was actually just in the place where they're going to have the first game, which is Canton, Ohio. Had a great time there. But we're just going to get right into it. And speaking of, places in Northeast Ohio, while I was there, I unfortunately got the news, as well as every Browns fan and every NFL fan around the world, that Baker Mayfield has finally been traded. And when I tell you, I saw it in the car. I got a notification. I didn't want to believe it was true. I literally stopped. I was really sad that whole car ride because I was going down, or I was going from Canton to Columbus, and whoever's watching from Ohio, that's a pretty far drive. So it was just murky feelings throughout that entire road trip. But needless to say, I'll kind of give my thoughts. I have been a Baker Mayfield fan ever since he's come in for us. He's done something that no Browns quarterback has done for 27 years, which was win a playoff game. He turned around the franchise, no more paper bags, and he gave us, literally in his first game playing, our first win in 635 days. Oh, man, I'm really going to miss him. I think he was a character. He gave this team an identity, and he really put us in some headlines. And sure, they may not have been the best, but it was some publicity, not just for being bad, not for being the Cleveland Clowns, the paper bag franchise, the one that everybody mocked. He was none of those things. And sure, he had his ups and downs, but I will always remember him. And he was the best quarterback I ever watched as a Browns fan. So, and the only one we really had as a stable one. So I'm really gonna miss him, and it sucks to say, but the trade details went down. He's now a Carolina Panther, gonna be fighting for the QB job alongside his 2018 draft counterpart Sam Darnold, which is so ironic that Jack is not here, but
What a QB room.
how ironic is it that the first and third pick are fighting for the same job in a different team that both of them were not drafted by?
Crazy.
It's pretty funny. Obviously, Baker Mayfield has a better, resume than Sam Darnold in the NFL, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. But the trade details was the Browns really could not do anything with their situation. I think everybody knew that they had to let him go. So it became Baker Mayfield along with, I believe, $6.5 million that the Panthers are. I think 5.5 that the Panthers are paying.
4.85 million.
Okay, 4.85, and then Bake is doing 3.5 in incentives instead of actual salary, and then the Browns are paying 10.5 million instead of 19.
Yep.
So that's kind of how it went down, and it's for a 2024 fifth round pick, with a conditional fourth depending on how much Baker plays. So that's the trade details. I'll let Shrikar get his thoughts off. Obviously, I kind of said it from a Browns fan perspective, but maybe you can get your thoughts on the overall trade.
Yeah, I think ever since this Baker Mayfield saga really began, once Cleveland had interest in Deshaun Watson, once it became public, Mayfield wanted out, understandably, and Andrew Berry was pretty much losing leverage every day. And the NFL had already seen, a lot of quarterback trades before this ever even came up. The Broncos and their Russell Wilson trade, the Commanders getting Carson Wentz for a second. The Browns kind of knew it was either you get Deshaun Watson or you start over, which is why he got that fully guaranteed $230 million deal. It was a big panic move, but I digress. Let's talk about Mayfield. Let's talk about Carolina. As for Carolina, I think it makes a lot of sense to do this. Trading for Baker on a reduced salary, easy move to make, and I think they 100% won this trade. They're upgrading from Sam Darnold to Baker. You give Matt Rule a chance to succeed, because this is a pretty much make or break year. It's his third year. Carolina is going to have the benefit of seeing Baker for a year, and they're not committed to him beyond this year. So they're going to see how he handles business in the building, how he gels with the coaching staff. Obviously, you have Ben McAdoo there as his offensive coordinator. If we look at the roster in Carolina, it's worse than what he had in Cleveland, especially on the O-line. But, I mean, there's talent there. They have a pair of good receivers in DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And obviously the big question we're all wondering is Christian McCaffrey's health, because over the past 2 seasons. He's played a combined 10 games, and we know he had that historic 2019 season where he won Offensive Player of the Year. He was a first-team All-Pro. So if Baker struggles, Carolina can just let him go. They'll get a comp pick back. If he has a great year, though, Panthers could franchise tag him. I mean, they do have a rough cap situation in 2023, so that's looking down the line. But I think all in all, the Browns basically mismanaged their asset, and they lost him for nothing. And Carolina was able to upgrade. So it's a win for the Panthers, a loss for the Browns. And these two teams play in week 1, so hopefully Mayfield's hoping for that same result. A win for the Panthers, a loss for the Browns.
I don't necessarily know what is defined as a win-loss in this trade for us, because it really just comes down to how does Deshaun do? Because Baker obviously did something that no Browns quarterback has ever done. So he's going to be held to a pretty high, Deshaun's got to do something more than what Baker did. And honestly, considerably more considering the money that we gave him, right? And the assets that that we had to trade for him. So I think that's where we'll really find out if it was a win or a loss for us. For the Panthers, I think it's an I love this move. I mean, this is tremendous. And obviously, I'm going to try and sound as unbiased as possible, but let's be real here. Baker is the only one out of any of these quarterbacks who has actually done something relevant in the NFL. Okay, I get it. Sure, you can talk about the great roster he had, but he took a team to the playoffs and he was 2 games away from a Super Bowl. So say what you want, he has that on his resume, and during that stretch, I know, a lot of media analysts like to bring it up, but I will do it as well. 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, had a QBR of 91 in the playoff game against Pittsburgh. So it's not like the dude can't play. The dude definitely can play. Now, I will say this about the Panthers roster. I think people are giving it a little bit less credit than for what it actually is. I think I've always said this. I've always thought the Panthers were, I've always kind of liked them in a weird, little way. I mean, my mom flies down to Charlotte a lot. So Christian McCaffrey's great. I think I'm still kind of defending him as the most valuable running back for any team. I still think that. And here's what I'll say. I think DJ Moore is the best receiver that Baker has had at their point in their careers. Like when you go through the rankings,
Landry?
I love Jarvis Landry. I don't think he was recognized in the same atmosphere as DJ Moore is right now. At least when he was a Brown. I don't think so. And Odell, same thing. Right? Maybe when he came in 2019, obviously, what he was recognized for. But in terms of, after he played a year with Mayfield, 2020, 2021, I don't think he was regarded in the same atmosphere as DJ Moore. I think that's a pretty valid statement. So this will be, I guess, the best receiver that Baker has played with. Right?
Well, it's not the weapons that worry me, though. It's the O-line that worries me.
Yeah, and I think the O-line, I think Icky is one of the best left tackles. I mean, I think he's the best tackle in the draft, and they'll put him at left, so I'm pretty happy with that. Austin Corbett was with us in 2019, and he had a pretty solid stint with us, and he also played for the Rams, so the dude can play. And Taylor Moton got a contract extension, so the dude can also play. So at least that's 3 guys that have done something for different teams. So I like those 3 guys. And then Bozeman, he's okay. And look, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Their left guard, I think, is like Pat Eifen or something. I have literally
Pat Elflein.
Elflein. I don't know. I haven't watched anything on him. I watched the rest of the guys. I don't know their left guard. But again, I mean, I could go through their entire roster, but their defense I've always liked, especially Brian Burns. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Period. And obviously J.C. Horn will come back. So I guess that leads me to another point, right? Because the Panthers really, it's a win. It's a low risk, high reward situation, right?
Yeah.
Do you think? All right, I'll ask you this: Do you think Baker will win the starting job? And if he does, are the Panthers a playoff team? Where do you see them going?
I'll start off by saying there is no way in hell that Darnold wins that job over Baker Mayfield. Mayfield is going to get that job, so that's a certainty to me. I think the Panthers do not make the playoffs. I think they're like a 7-10, 8-9 sort of team to me. But it kind of depends, because now you're in a tricky situation if you're Carolina, because if Baker goes 7-10, that puts you in a really weird spot as to what to do with him. Obviously, I think the tag would be coming in that case, but it's a really sticky spot. when you look at the Browns O-line, I'm bringing up O-line for a reason. When Baker's under pressure, I don't think he's as good. So now you go from the Browns O-line to the Panthers O-line, and I don't know. I don't think they could be a fringe playoff team, but can I definitively say they're going to make the playoffs? I'm going to say no.
All right. Now, I don't think anybody has watched more in-game tape of Baker Mayfield than I have. Like, I have watched this dude every play, every down, every game for the last 4 years. I have really watched this guy. And obviously, I watch my replays, I watch my highlights, I watch my all 22. But in-game, live action, I'm always tuned in. I've never, he's the guy I've just watched really close. And every time I watch him, and everybody gives me this notion that the O-line is, carrying him and he benefits completely from it. I don't necessarily see the same things that people are saying with that. When he's under pressure, I agree. He will make stupid, ill-advised decisions.
Yeah.
But it's not, necessarily on him. There's a lot of the times where our offensive line, first of all, we're a better run-blocking offensive line than we are a pass-blocking O-line. Second, when the pocket collapses, we collapse quickly. And if you watch, for example, the Steelers game in 2021, and I know Baker was hurt, right? Just watch how quickly they would give up. And he would have less than 1.5 seconds to throw. And I'm not going to defend him and say he can't do it, right? And say he's just, it was the O-line's fault. But I think the switch from the Browns O-line to the Panthers O-line is going to have less of an impact as people think. That's all I'm trying to say. And then also, the Panthers schedule is it's meh. It's meh.
Yeah,
right? It's just meh. And then, they have to play the AFC North. So obviously they get to play us. They have to play, the Bengals, who I think are going to be good. The Ravens, who I think are going to be good. And they, their schedule is just going to be meh. And I'm not going to go through each of them. But what I will say is if he takes them to the playoffs, especially if he wins a game, I think you give him an extension.
I agree.
Right. If he goes 7-10, as you said, in this murky situation, right, then I think you franchise tag him.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Panthers fall south and finish last in the South again, then you let him go. Right?
And at that point,
I think
Mayfield's
pretty
done.
easy. I think those are pretty easy categories to label what his future is. And I think he also knows that, right? He knows that there are 3 ways this can go down. He succeeds, he overachieves, makes the playoffs in this. He succeeds and does what, not a lot of people expect him to do, but also doesn't go, the full length and what we're kind of talking about, this mediocrity. And then he obviously fails. That would be the worst case. I think that's probably what I'm looking at right now. And now, what do I think? I think you should label the Panthers now as a sleeper team. I think they should be, they were in my 4-13 kind of range. Now they've vaulted up for me as a sleeper team. They finally have a quarterback who at least has done something and is experienced enough and has shown flashes to where it's you can really take this team to the playoffs. I just want people to watch and rewatch 2020 film of Baker Mayfield. It was the last time he was healthy, and I know people can say it was 2 years ago or he had a really good team. Just please watch it. When he was at his best, he was confident, he was poised, and I finally had faith in my quarterback. I finally had that, joy I got his rookie year. I finally wanted the ball in his hands. In 2019 and 2021, the 2 years he struggled, I wanted no part of him having control of the offense. But in the years that he was good, he just has this moxie about him where it's I want this guy in control, I want this guy in command, and I want the ball in his hands no matter what. That's the type of moxie he gives off, and I really hope he finds that again in Carolina. It's just something that you can't put into stats, but the stats show it, right? He had a lot of really good games, and the Cincinnati won in 2020, or the Ravens won in 2020, or the Steelers won. He had a lot of those good games. It's just something you see, and I really hope that fans who, because I've seen a lot of Browns fans really been down on him. I've seen the NFL world be down on him. They're really split. There's some people rooting for him and a lot of them are not. And I would just tell you, if anybody is going to use this opportunity, put a chip on his shoulder and prove him wrong, it's the guy that was a walk-on twice in Texas Tech and Oklahoma.
That's what I was actually going to say, because we never really talked about that angle of him being pissed off and having the chip on his shoulder from the Browns. Could it help him vault this team to a playoff team? Maybe. There's some
I think it
aspect
can.
about like an angry Mayfield that I actually sort of like. Um, and also, Anish, you talked about this in years past. And I don't know if it was for the Browns specifically or if it was for Baker, but usually when people don't expect Baker to be, really
Thank you. I
good.
was just about to say that. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, but no, this is something Anish brought up back, I think, in 2020 or before last year. But if they don't expect Baker to be, if they don't have higher expectations for him, he'll show out and he'll look to prove people wrong. Um, I'll let you speak more on it, but that's kind of the situation he's heading into this year. People are kind of overlooking it a little bit. He was one of the last QBs to go off the board, and who knows? Maybe he can use that to his advantage.
Yeah, I was literally that was gonna be my next point. So, um, think about it. Every year that he's come in and nobody's expected anything, right? In 2018, he was literally awarded the backup job as like a prize, as a consolation prize in training camp in Hard Knocks. Nobody expected him to do anything with that team. They'd gone 0-17. It was a sorry roster, sorry franchise. That's what everyone thought. And he somehow was literally 2 games away from a playoff berth that year, right? 2019, people start to think, oh my God, is this a Super Bowl team with all the moves? What happens? They falter. 2020, nobody really thinks of anything. Oh, we had these expectations. What did they do? Nothing. They make the playoffs 2 games away from a Super Bowl. 2021, it's all this hype. Oh, they were there. They finally showed it. Can they do it again? He gets hurt, and we, fail expectations.
Hmm.
It's just a pattern, and I'm a superstitious guy, but it's just what he's done. Look at his college career, look at his NFL career, his high school career. It's just who he is. And as I've said, when I scout quarterbacks for Cal, I always have this thing. Leadership is something that you just have. It's something that you can't just build when you're in the NFL. It's something that you've had throughout high school and college. It's something that you don't really inherit it, but it's something that you just can't have when you go professional. It's a
Hmm.
quality, and he has that.
Yep.
And I don't know where this whole, I've heard the childish rumors, I've heard all that. There's still teammates that ride by him, and I think sure he can act a little bit childish. You can see it on the sidelines, but when push comes to shove, and he has that chip on his shoulder, the NFL world should be scared of an angry Baker Mayfield.
I really think with the childish rumors, that was more so in college rather than the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I really don't know, what's in store for the Panthers. I would love to see them shock the world and make the playoffs. I If I were to bet on it, obviously, or a gun to my head, I would say no, but I think they shouldn't they will now be in my, sleeper team conversation.
All right.
All right. Moving on. Franchise tag deadlines are fast approaching. There's certain guys, that we kind of have on our list. Dalton Schultz, Jesse Bates, Mike Gesicki, and Orlando Brown. And I guess we'll kind of talk about those guys and where we see that. The franchise tag is becoming it's becoming a very weird thing to do in the NFL now because players have more power, contracts are becoming way more player driven, and the franchise tag is now becoming a very murky water. A lot of players are flat out just skipping over it and saying, hey, I'm not even going to wait a year. I want my money right now, because in the NFL it's not even about the salary, it's about the guaranteed money, and that's what players look for.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of start it off whether or not we think they'll get tagged, and do you think it's worth it? So Dalton Schultz.
So Dalton Schultz, it's interesting. Or I'll package the tight ends together. I think both guys are going to play out the tag. Schultz and Gesicki, they're both emerging, but for them to be signed long term, it's probably going to take a deal bigger than what Cleveland gave David Njoku. And Njoku signed for like 4 years, 56 mil, around 30 mil guaranteed. So both Gesicki and Schultz have been better statistically than Njoku, and both the Dolphins and Cowboys could tag each of them again in 2023 if they need to. So I think the teams have the leverage here. So if I were to package the tight ends together, I'm going to say both of them play out the tag.
I agree, and what I would say though is, do I think it's worth it? For Gesicki, yes. For Schultz, no. I've talked to a lot of Cowboy fans, and we've kind of come to this consensus. Dalton Schultz is good, but he's replaceable. He's not a guy that has a specific quality about him that makes him perfect for that role of starting Cowboys tight end. And no knock on him. He's a good football player. It's just there's nothing, special specifically about him that is worthy of a long-term extension, if you get what I'm saying. Like,
I agree with you.
right?
Yeah.
And there are other tight ends that could fill that role, which is
Mhm.
why I'm saying I wouldn't give him a long-term deal. And frankly, I didn't think we should have given, David Njoku is very iffy. I really don't think we should have, but these are the two tight ends that haven't gotten it. And I think, first of all, I think Gesicki is the better out of the two. And I think both will do well on the tag. It's just Dalton Schultz. I just haven't seen anything emerged out of him that makes me think, oh, well, he's this good of a blocker on these certain run schemes, or he's this good of a route runner, or he's this good of a pass catcher. There's not really, he's just good at everything, but he's not great at one thing that you would really want him for. So,
Yep.
and Gesicki obviously is a great vertical threat, and he's someone that you love to have over the middle of the field because of his height. And he's also a decent blocker, more of a receiver, but that's why I think if anyone were to deserve a deal out of the two, I think it would be Mike Gesicki. Oh, even including Njoku, I think Gesicki's better than him.
Yeah, I mean, with the Njoku deal, it's just the Browns keep banking on potential, but I don't think that's the way to play it because I need to see the production first if you're going to go give him a deal like that. So, yeah, I agree. Schultz can be replaceable.
I think, I mean, the Browns let go of two starting receivers this year. So, let's see if Njoku can get involved. They just kind of have a weird receiver room. Obviously, Amari Cooper is a proven commodity, but, is rookie David Bell going to become the wide receiver too? Where does DPJ fall in the mix? Anthony Schwartz was a third round pick last year. So you've really got these four receivers that are just there, and you don't really know who's your receiver 2, receiver 3. So it's a little bit iffy for Njoku, but we'll move on to Orlando Brown. I heard he was seeking a deal over $23 million annually.
25 mil.
25 mil. Would you give it to him?
Okay. I'll say this. The Chiefs are under pressure because Brown is 26. He's made 3 straight Pro Bowls. He's protecting Mahomes' blind side. If there's ever a player that the Chiefs are essentially forced to pay, it's Brown. So I'm going to say yes, they very well should pay him. But the Chiefs have proven before that, they're not going to be backed into a corner, and they showed that with the Tyreek Hill trade. So it's just a really big chess match there. If I was to make a prediction, I think the sides do get a deal done, and I think it's going to be a massive contract. Brown will get what he wants because ultimately he has the leverage here because he can sit out, and I don't think he's going to get fined because he hasn't actually signed the tag yet. So if Brown has the leverage here, I think they're gonna pay the guy who protects Patrick Mahomes' blind side.
I completely agree. I think if anybody is worth it, as you said, it's him. And here's why, right? So you compared the Tyreek situation. Look, I've said this 100 times. Patrick Mahomes has averaged 316 yards per game without Tyreek Hill. And receivers are replaceable. And I know that's crazy to say, even with Tyreek Hill's speed. The Chiefs play an offense to where they get fast receivers anyway. And sure, one guy maybe runs a tad slower. But they're still all really quick, and I think Mahomes will adjust, especially with a guy like Travis Kelce there. Also, as you said, protecting his blind side, Orlando Brown could do things that Eric Fisher could never do.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
That is why I would give him the money. And as you mentioned, he's 26. That's a really good age to pay a left tackle. I think the sides do get a deal done. I don't know if it'll be upward of 25. If it's leaked that he wants that, it'll probably be around that. So I would say it's a contract that you should pay, and it's for a guy who can really help this Chiefs offense stay afloat as one of the top dogs in the league.
Yep, a franchise left tackle, really, really hard to come by.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, final player is the one that Jared, my friend from Bengals Central, our good buddy on this show. Is he worth a long-term extension? Will he sign the tag? He's voiced his frustrations about it. A cornerstone for this team back in the OG days when they were not the Bengals that we know right now. Does he deserve to get his pay, and will he?
I do think he deserves to get paid, and I do think he will get paid. And I think Jesse Bates' situation, it's about the message it's going to send because the Bengals have always been seen as cheap, and that has changed over the past 2 years. I think Bates, it's like a good litmus test to see how much they've actually changed as an organization. Because the Bengals are coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, obviously. And in the playoffs, it was the defense leading the way. And Jesse Bates is arguably the second best player, maybe the best player on that unit. Trey Hendrickson is up there as well. So if I'm Duke Tobin, you can show that the Bengals are willing to pay homegrown talent for a guy that stuck it out with them based on his performance by signing Bates long term. And I think it's going to happen. I think the contract will look something similar to what Marcus Williams got with the Ravens. And I'm pretty sure that was 5 years, 70 mil, and that was 37 mil guaranteed. So I think he'll get something around that. But if I'm the Bengals, I'm definitely rewarding Jesse Bates for the work he's done for this team.
I think you brought up a great point about what the Bengals have shown about being cheap. Especially this offseason, they've demolished that, notion
Yep.
with all the guys that they've brought in. They've had a great free agency. And not to mention the fact that, Jesse Bates, as you said, was a franchise cornerstone that was homegrown.
Right.
And him and Minkah Fitzpatrick were two of the guys that I thought disappointed us in the regular season. But when the playoffs came around, Jesse Bates was really, really good. He really stepped up and he made some really key plays down the stretch. He was the one who tipped the pass to Von Bell for the, not game win. Like, it was a really key play on overtime against the Chiefs to really send him to the Super Bowl. So Jesse Bates has done wonders in the playoffs. Obviously, he has tape from 2020 that really backs it up. If you really went off the 21 regular season, you could say, okay, he didn't show us consistency, but when the games really counted, he was there. So I do think he does garner an extension. It should be around the contract of Marcus Williams, as you said. I think maybe a little bit more just because of the name recognition.
Yeah.
But I do think the sides should get a deal done. And as you mentioned, it'll help really establish the Bengals as a team like, hey, we're really in this thing. Like, we're not just a team that will rely on homegrown talent. We want to look good for our fans and really represent this franchise in a better way. So, as you mentioned, I think that's a really good narrative push that the Bengals are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Sticking in the AFC North, we're just going to kind of talk about Lamar Jackson a little bit, and not because of all the tweets he sent out today, absolutely bashing a former Baltimore Raven. I mean, I've never seen someone reply, someone of his caliber as an athlete reply that many times in that time span to a dude who really doesn't have as much of a say towards everybody in the NFL world, right? Like,
Yeah.
no disrespect to the player that he, kind of fired back at. He's a Super Bowl champion with the Ravens in 2012. But I mean, yeah, so we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about, is Lamar Jackson in your top 10 for quarterbacks? And I guess I'll start off on this one. Look, my top 10, I will still include Deshaun Watson. I don't know why people don't. It's kind of, even if he plays, doesn't play, he's still in the NFL as of right now. And I think you should rank him. So, I would say Patrick Mahomes. I would say Aaron Rodgers at 2, Tom Brady at 3, Josh Allen 4. 5, I go Burrow. 6, Herbert. I really don't care. You can kind of switch them. I just hate while people argue so passionately about it. It's literally a difference of one or the other. Like, they're both really good. So yeah, 5 Burrow, 6 Herbert. I think I put Watson at 7, and then I put Russell Wilson at 8, Stafford at 9, and then 10, I believe I put Kyler Murray, and 11 I put Lamar Jackson. So by that logic, he's not. And obviously, if I took out Deshaun Watson out of my list, then he would be. So I don't think it should be a question of, does he crack the top 10? I just think of where it should be tiers. Where does he stand? What is his tier, right? Because a couple of years ago, he was an MVP candidate and everybody thought, oh my God, is he like one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league? No, he's not. He's not on the tier. They're just quarterbacks that I think are better than him in a lot of ways and are a good tier above him. Those are the guys, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Tom Brady. I think those are the 4 consensus top 5 or top 4 that you should have. And then Burrow, Herbert, Watson kind of round out that next tier. And you could put Russ and Stafford in there too. I think Lamar is in this tier with Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, and Dak Prescott. I think that's his tier. I think all those guys have shown elite production at times, but they've also shown a lot of flaws and incapabilities, whether it's, Derek Carr's kind of inability to trick people at the line of scrimmage. He kind of gives it away pre-snap. Some of his pocket presence. Kyler Murray, obviously, the inconsistencies and the knee injuries kind of derailed a little bit of his second half of the year. And Lamar Jackson, it's been throwing the football, right? Consistent accuracy on all 3 levels, which is something that he struggled with. And that's why I think for the difference in why I put Kyler over Lamar is that Kyler is, Kyler runs when he can. Lamar runs when Lamar relies on it a little bit more than Kyler does. And I think Kyler's a more accurate passer. So with that being said, I'll let you kind of go into it.
Yeah, the reason I put this topic on our list is because I've seen so many things on my timeline about, is Lamar Jackson a top 10 quarterback, even before this, squabble with that player today. But I'm actually putting him at the exact same spot that you are. He is at 11 for me. And I like Lamar. Lamar is so tough to read for me because he is very unique. He is extremely hard to defend. I mean, defensive coordinators are literally spending sleepless nights working on a game plan against him. I think the main problem I have with putting him in my top 10 is that if you're in my top 10, those same defensive coordinators should be scared of you throwing the ball. And I just don't think teams are scared of Lamar throwing. Now, part of that is the supporting cast he has around him. It's not great. But I've seen people, say the issues because of how the Ravens play, and I really disagree with that notion because I feel like the Ravens would love to throw the ball more often, but Lamar hinders them in that sense. And again, I'll agree with people that are saying, it's the supporting cast because part of it is they haven't hit on early receivers. Rashad Bateman is a question mark. We'll see. Marquise Brown was just dealt away, and he had an up and down tenure in Baltimore. But I look at Lamar, and I ask the question if I'm scared of him throwing the ball, and my answer is going to be no. At least not to the extent of, the guys that are in my top 10. He's not scaring me like a guy like Rodgers or a guy like Mahomes or Brady and Allen. So I think that's why he's missing out on my top 10. If he can prove that, he can actually scare me by throwing the ball, then yeah, I'd go top 10. But for now, he's just outside. But I agree with the tiers. I think I'd have that same tier ranking for him and the same players inside that tier as well.
I think you said it good in the sense that so a power run scheme, which is what the Ravens are going to run and they have been running, it thrives off play action. That's what play action passing, which obviously is throwing the football, is what makes a power run scheme so effective, right? It's because those are the deep shots. Those are the ones that really put the nail in the coffin after running it, and you just throw it and kind of end it. Now, I will say this though. The NFL has changed in the way that you cannot run the ball through the playoffs. Even though weather gets cold, right? I used to say this all the time. The game will slow down when in January, the weather's getting cold and you got to win when the game slows down. The problem is you got to have a passing game now. It's just people are finding ways to get through the weather with it. I mean, it's crazy to even think about that 42-36 was a score in ice cold Missouri. That's crazy. I mean, these guys were just throwing it left and right. That's why I'm saying there's a new era of quarterbacks where you have everything. And, just players are evolving. The sport is evolving. And the Ravens cannot continue like this. They need Lamar Jackson to step up. And it's just crazy to me because he is so dynamic. I mean, I've watched him so many times when we play him. And I've obviously watched a lot of Lamar film. It's just crazy to me that he is so dynamic with the football in his hands, especially as an open field runner. But there are times where he just misses throws that are, they're just gimmies. They're handouts. And there are ones that I question where it's what is he kind of thinking? And I think for him, it's he's trying to see the field in a way where it's okay, this, I know I'm going to run this play, and this, I know I'm going to pass this play. That's kind of what you get from him. Mm-hmm. You kind of feel like he makes up his mind before the play happens, and that leads to some unnecessary sacks. Because if he's dedicated to running on a play, he will try everything he can to do it, and that's what leads to something where he gets, just blindsided by someone and loses 10 yards.
Yep.
So I think that's what keeps him out of the top 10 for me, and that's something that I don't see Kyler do, and I think Kyler is way more effective as a passer, which is why I just took Kyler into as an example because he's my 10th. So I guess we're both in consensus here that Lamar Jackson, as good as he is, just outside, but he's in that tier of, which I guess Kyler's a 10. So he's really right up there where he can go up to 10 or down below.
Yep.
Alrighty, and our final segment of the episode, as we said last time whenever we recorded, we're going to do a fantasy segment each time. And this time it's going to be, one guy we think is a sleeper for the 2022 NFL season for your fantasy roster. And one guy we think, maybe getting too much praise. One guy you should probably avoid in your lineups, or at least drafting him. And I'll start with a sleeper. I think it's, Jaylen Waddle is my number one. I know we only said one, but I wanted to throw in J.K. Dobbins and Keenan Allen in there. Jaylen Waddle, I think, is getting swept under the radar just because Tyreek Hill is now a Dolphin. I think Jaylen Waddle is still going to be a reception, magnet. And sure, he may not be that wide receiver one that you so desperately would have loved to have. And he probably was going to be that had Tyreek not been there. But I think he's going to be a great wide receiver too, not only for the Dolphins, but also in your fantasy lineups. I think he's someone who gets open a lot, and in a spread, not a spread offense, but in a outside zone offense that the Dolphins will be running, he will have a plethora of targets in short passing options, RPOs, bubble screens, and that's going to be a great uptick for a PPR fantasy team.
Yep, I agree. With the way that Mike McDaniel's going to run this offense, kind of Shanahan style, I think Waddle's going to be a seamless fit here. The target share may not be the same, but he'll still get volume. He'll get production there. So I agree with that. My sleeper is one that's pretty popular among a lot of people. It's Travis Etienne, obviously coming off that Liz Frank injury that sidelined him for all of last year. He is returning. Now, there are some doubts. How is he going to come back from the injury? How is he going to be utilized by Doug Peterson? This is an Urban Meyer pick technically, but I actually like the prospects of how Doug Peterson could use Travis Etienne in this offense. Maybe he could be used in that CMC type of role potentially, and if he is, there's really great value there as a pass catching back. We saw it throughout his college days. He has a good rapport with Trevor Lawrence already, so I think with that in mind, I think his fit in this offense could be good. But again, their question mark is how will Doug Peterson use him? But I think he'll make it work. And I think Etienne will get a lot more volume this year. The chemistry will be there. And I think he'll have a lot of value for the role he's going to play in this offense.
Absolutely. Love Travis Etienne. I did a video on him and Najee Harris. I think he's a great back, very elusive. And I think he'll be using a lot of receiver spots, he'll be slotted as a receiver a lot of downs. So I'm excited to see that. I think he's going to do really well. Now, players you should avoid. Again, we're not saying these guys are bad, just players that we don't think you should maybe draft. And I'm going to go up and ahead and say Hollywood Brown. Now, I know you might be thinking, he just got traded to the Cardinals. He's Kyler's, good buddy, and he's going to be the wide receiver one on that team for the first 6 weeks. The problem is he's not going to be the wide receiver one for the last 6 weeks, which is your playoffs. And also, even when he's been the true wide receiver one for the Ravens, he hasn't gotten that production that you so desperately have needed. And it's also, been very inconsistent. I don't know if it's going to be consistent. I just wouldn't there are a lot of guys that he's going over, and I would not take him over guys like, again, a Jaylen Waddle. I think he's a way better, pick. Hollywood Brown is just too volatile for me, and I'm a little bit scared to draft him because of that.
Yeah, I don't think Hollywood Brown is a number one. So even if you're getting him for the first 6 weeks, I don't think it makes sense. And he's got a pretty big load to carry here because even Christian Kirk is gone. So I don't know. I mean, he's a good talent, but from what we've seen in Baltimore, as I said before, up and down. I don't expect much different with Arizona, but it's a good change of scenery for him. Maybe he'll make it work. My guy to avoid is actually on my favorite team. It's Elijah Mitchell. And if we remember last year, he was, a big breakout player, definitely a surprise. He was our starting back down the stretch, 100 yards per game. He was on it, especially in the playoffs. And he's going to enter this year technically as the primary ball carrier. But if I know Kyle Shanahan, which I do since 2017, running backs are replaceable. And he drafted Tyrion Davis-Price in the 3rd round. We're seeing a lot of reports of Trey Sermon getting a lot more work, a lot more reps. So I'm not going to say Mitchell's regressing because of his talent, because that's not the situation at all. I think it's more of a usage thing. And I think Kyle Shanahan is going to move off him during the year. So if I'm a fantasy manager, I don't trust Niners running backs. I've said that, they're definitely waiver pickups, but I just don't think he is a starting option or, he's a guy to avoid moving forward.
I think Elijah Mitchell is the best one out of the 3. I actually think he will, be the best one and most productive out of the 3. But you are right. The committee factor is something to look at. And, if there's guys with more volume and maybe more of a surefire factor, I would probably take that over a guy with, boom potential, but also a lot of this, what if he gets out of the committee? Then he's completely useless, and you wasted a really good draft.
Well, he won't be out of the committee, but he'll be lower.
Yeah, and you don't want to waste a high draft pick on that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Just be careful. But I still see some boom potential in him. But hey, you never know. But with that being said, we're back better than ever. And we're excited to get you guys some new content on the way. Again, be sure to follow us down in the description. I'll leave all our socials. We have a TikTok now. I've been doing that. It's been a lot of fun. So be sure to follow that and check out Srikar's tweets on our Twitter down there. With that being said, again, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Anish and Srikar from the Cold Hard Truth NFL podcast, and we will see you guys next time.